Hey, we are on Unit 8. This is our last topic in Unit 8. It is factoring. But it's factoring when there is no GCF. That's the important part. There's one thing to remember over here. I'm going to put a star there. And it's that when we are asked to factor, we take the terms given and we put them on the inside of the box method, and then we work to figure out the terms that go on the outside. Another way to think about factoring is that we're basically just dividing. We're dividing in order to find the terms that multiply to get our answer. All right, so the first example here we're going to walk through says factor x squared plus 3x plus 2. So we have these three terms. First, it says to look for a GCF. And remember, we said a GCF is the biggest expression that divides into all three of these. This does not have a GCF. I can tell because there are x's, two of them here, one here, no x's here. And also think about the coefficients. This x squared actually has a coefficient of 1. So my terms here are 1, 3, and 2. They do not have any numbers in common that they can be divided by. So there is no GCF. I'm going to write that here. No GCF. All right, and then it says set up the box, and we fill out the inside. So what I'm going to do here is that my first term, x squared, is going to go in the first box. My last term of 2 is going to go in the last box. And what I need to figure out is what term goes on these middle boxes, right? And it's a little bit harder to do that without some legwork. So it says to fill out the rest of the box, we need to solve this little mystery. And we're going to learn how to do this in sort of like a pattern. All right, so it says to fill out the rest, we need to solve a mystery. The first mystery is that we look at our original problem, x squared plus 3x plus 2, and I drew this little house above them. And what I do is I take the coefficient of the first term and the last term, and I do 1 multiplied by 2. I multiply them, and I get 2. And we ask ourselves, what two numbers multiply to get 2? So this, when I multiply in my house, that goes right here, this little puzzle. And I ask myself, what times what gives me the number 2? And then the second thing I have to figure out is that those same two numbers have to add up to get the number 3. So we have this puzzle, right? So we need two numbers that when multiplied, they give you 2, and when added, they give you 3. And we're going to solve that puzzle over and over and over again. There's always only going to be one answer. So here's our answer. Our answer is 1 multiplied by 2, because 1 times 2 is 2, and then 1 plus 2 gives you 3. So our magic mystery numbers are 1 and 2. So we use those mystery numbers, 1 and 2, to fill out the rest of the box. And we're going to put them here, a 1 and a 2. And the key thing is that when we put them in the box, they need to have an x. So I'm going to say 1x and 2x. The reason that we do that is because I want you to think about these in terms of like terms. 1x plus 2x gives us 3x, our middle term. And then that means that altogether I have x squared plus 3x plus 2, which is what I started with, x squared plus 3x plus 2. All right, now I have to figure out what goes on the outside of the box. And we do that by just completing this like multiplication puzzle. We've done this a bunch in the past. So I know that to get x squared, I'm going to need an x and an x. And if I have an x here and I have a 1x here, that means I just have to have a 1. And if I have an x up here and I have a 2x, that means I need a 2 right here. All right, so what's left over here and here, that is our answer. So it says your answers are the expressions outside of the box. So my answer is, I'm going to write x and 2 first, x and positive 2, close parentheses, and then x and positive 1. And this is my final answer. I'll put a box around that. All right, we're going to try another one. Okay, so now we're going to factor this. This is a little bit harder, but we're going to start. We have this same little puzzle laid out here, right? We need two numbers that multiply to get something and add to get something. So the multiplication part comes from, I'm going to draw the little hat, and I'm going to do up here 3 times negative 2, and that gives me negative 6, and that's what goes right here. So I need two numbers that multiply to get negative 6, and I need two numbers that add to get positive 5. And before I move on and work through this puzzle, I'm actually going to take my first term, 3x squared, and put it here. And I'm going to take my last term, negative 2, and put it here. Okay, now back to our little puzzle over here. I need two numbers that multiply to get negative 6. Now multiplication, that means one of them is negative, but they add to get positive 5. So I think that those two numbers are going to be 6 and 1. So I'm going to put them here, 6 and 1. But I need it to be negative 6. So one of these has to be negative. And now you have to look down here. If you want this to be positive 5, it means that the 1 has got to be negative. So 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. 6 plus negative 1 is positive 5. All right, so these two numbers are mystery numbers. 6 and negative 1 go in the box. So I'm going to put it here, 6 and negative 1, and they both get an x, 6x and negative 1x. All right, now we just have to work backwards to fill out the outside. So this part is a little bit tricky. So I have x squared here, right? So I know I need an x and an x, but I need to decide where to put the 3. So I can put a 3 here or a 3 here. So if you put a 3 here, then 3x times x is x squared. And then I can do this part easily. 3x times what number will give me 6x? That's a 2. If I were to have put the 3 here, that would be much harder to do. So you might get caught in a little trap where you have to, if you put the 3 here, you would have to rearrange it. So 3 has to go here. And then x times this would be negative 1. All right, so these are our answers. So our answer is 3x minus 1, close parentheses, and then x plus 2. All right, next one we have x squared plus 7x plus 10. So I'm going to make the little hat. X squared is just has a coefficient of 1, so I do 1 times 10, and that gives me 10. So that means I need to solve this puzzle. What two numbers multiply to get 10 and add to get 7? And that one's a little bit easier than the last one. It's just 5 and 2, both positive, 5 and 2. Okay, so now let's fill in the box here. I have a 1x squared, right? So that goes here. I have a 10, so that goes here. And then lastly, I have my mystery numbers, 5x and 2x. And now we fill out the box, x and x. I need a 5, I need a 2. These are my answers, x plus 2, x plus 5. All right, so one more example on this page. We have x squared minus 6x plus 9. I'm going to start by doing this little hat method, and I get 1 times 9. That gives me 9. Okay, so that 9 I use, and this time I didn't give you this little puzzle. You have to set it up on your own. What times what equals 9? What plus what equals, and we have to look at our middle number, negative 6. Okay, so I need two numbers that multiply to get positive 9, add to get negative 6. So to get 9, there's not many options. I'm going to choose 3 and 3, because 3 and 3 could work to get me negative 6, but look, I need it to be a positive 9. And positive 3 and positive 3 will never get me negative 6. I need those both to be negative, and if they're both negative, they multiply to get positive 9. So that works, negative 3 and negative 3. All right, I'm going to set up my box method right here, 2 by 2, and I'm going to put x squared and 9 in the first and the last box, right? So I have x squared, I have a 9, and then my two numbers are right here, negative 3 and negative 3. They both get x's. Now you fill out the box, x and x. Negative 3 goes here, negative 3 goes here. These are my answers, x minus 3, x minus 3. Now, very often, this answer you could write differently. We know that x minus 3 times itself, you could just write this as x minus 3 squared. That means exactly the same thing.